the night that real estate tycoon and unofficial head of the Marchetti family, Dante Marchetti, decided he needed a companion for Milan's most important charity auction, he did not consult his usual list of dazzling socialites or film actresses. Instead, he remained in the comforting darkness of the east wing of his mansion, watching the only light on, his nana's, grandmother's, room. It was there that he saw her. He walked silently to the main hall and stopped at the ajar door of the room, where the caregiver was finishing adjusting the silk pillows. He pointed at her. Chiara Rossi, the caregiver. Chiara had stopped the low hum of her 4-infusion pump, concentrated on monitoring Nana Sophia's pulse oximeter. She was short but strong, wearing dark blue scrubs that always seemed freshly pressed despite the long hours. Her dark brown hair was pulled into a strict, professional bun atop her head. Her nape was the only skin Dante could see besides her competent, clean hands. She froze when Dante's shadow projected over the nightlight. She turned slowly, her gray-blue eyes fixed on him without the slightest trace of flirtation or fear, only the professional caution of someone always on duty. Dante Marchetti was, in the eyes of Milan, a controlled force of nature, a tailored suit, an overwhelming presence, and eyes of a green so intense they seemed like laser scans. He was dressed in dark trousers and a black V-neck t-shirt, the uniform of his nightly vigilance. He hadn't smiled in years, and his voice, which could topple empires, was low and deep. "Sir," Chiara whispered, stepping away from the bed with the silent efficiency of a ghost. She closed the door to the suite's empty bathroom and turned to him, expecting what she always expected, a question about Nana's vitals or a demand regarding medication. "Tomorrow night," Dante said, leaning slightly against the doorframe. He was calm, but there was a silent tension in his broad shoulders. "Yes, sir. It's Mrs. Viviani's rest shift. I'll take the night." Dante shook his head, his gaze examining the way she folded a freshly used tissue, the only unnecessary movement she made. "Not the shift," he corrected. "The auction. You're coming with me." Chiara paralyzed. The 4-color pen she used to record medical readings slipped from her fingers and fell onto the thick carpet without making a sound. The silence in the east wing of the mansion, usually punctuated only by the sound of the matriarch's breathing, now felt like a vacuum. She blinked, forcing herself to focus. I didn't hear correctly, Mr. Marchetti. I am Chiara Rossi, Nana's nurse and caregiver." "I am not." "I know exactly who you are," his voice was a muffled thunder. "And I don't repeat myself. The annual charity heritage auction. You will be on my arm." Chiara's heart began to beat erratically. Her scrubs were stained with a bit of coffee she had spilled hours ago. She wore comfortable, non-slip shoes so as not to make noise on the marble floor. She didn't belong at any of Dante's social events, much less the most important one. "Sir, with all due respect, you are mistaken," she said, her voice tight but maintaining the professional tone that had become her armor. "I am an employee. I don't have the attire. I have an obligation to your grandmother's safety. I am a health professional, not an escort," he finished for her. "Every woman I call for an event knows the price of my attention. They want a contract, a magazine article, the latest Bulgari necklace. They want something from me." He stepped into the light, revealing the ruggedness of his jaw. "You are the only one who wants absolutely nothing." Chiara felt completely naked under his gaze, even in the most modest clothes in the mansion. Her duty was the only thing that mattered. "I am paid to take care of your grandmother, Mr. Marchetti. That is all I want," she insisted. "I don't know how to interact with your associates, your politicians. I will be an embarrassment." A slight air of contempt brushed his lips, directed not at her, but at her world. "An embarrassment is better than a serpent. I need someone without venom at my gala. Someone who isn't counting down the moment they can sell me to the press." He looked into her clear, steady eyes. You are the only person in this house who looks me in the eye and only sees a potential patient. The silence was broken by a softer, weaker voice. Dante, dear? Nana Sophia had woken up. She was watching the interaction, a faint smile on her lips. You better choose Chiara. She is much stronger than all your skinny models. Dante didn't look away from Chiara. She's worried about the dress, Nana. Sophia laughed. That is the easiest thing to solve. I have boxes in the attic, treasures I haven't used in decades. You will look stupenda, my dear. Please, go with him. He needs honest eyes by his side. Chiara looked at the matriarch, who was already closing her eyes again. Nana was involved. Dante had made refusal almost impossible. The boss of the business mafia was forcing a companion to protect him from his own reputation, and the caregiver was the perfect shield. I am not refusing, Mr. Marchetti, she said, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. I just don't understand the consequences. Your world is not your world, he completed, his voice softening like that of a predator who knows the prey is cornered. But for one night, you will be under my banner. And in my world, that is the only thing that matters. You are under my protection. You move as I command, and speak only when I allow. He took a final step, invading her personal space. Be ready at 7 p.m. The driver will come. And take off those scrubs. Tomorrow, you are no longer the caregiver. He turned, leaving Chiara alone in the matriarch's room with the echo of his command and the weight of a secret he didn't understand. She picked up the pen that had fallen, feeling the tremor in her hands. She looked at Nana, who was sleeping peacefully, and then at her own reflection in the dark mirror. What did it mean to be Dante Marchetti's protected? And what would happen to the piece she had found here, hidden under the cloak of dedication and the dark blue uniform? She didn't know, but she felt she had just signed a dangerous contract. Chiara spent the day in a state of professional denial. Taking care of Nana Sophia became her only focus, but with every adjustment of the pillow, every temperature reading, Dante's deep voice echoed in her mind, you are no longer the caregiver. At 6 p.m., an austere and impeccably dressed personal assistant of Dante's knocked on Nana's door. She didn't speak, only led her to the main wing, to a large dressing room Chiara never knew existed. Mr. Marchetti sent this, the assistant said, pointing to a dress hanging on a silk hanger. The dress was a cascade of deep emerald green silk, cut to fall in a fluid line and elegantly open at the back. It was modest in front, but the subtle revelation in the back felt stark to Chiara. It had nothing to do with the modesty of her scrubs. Beside it lay high-heeled shoes that looked sculpted from glass and a discreet set of white gold jewelry. As the assistant worked on her hair, releasing the austere bun and transforming it into soft waves, Chiara tried to argue, feeling like a fraud. Mr. Marchetti will regret this. I am not a woman for this kind of exposure. The assistant smiled enigmatically. Mr. Marchetti rarely regrets his choices. And he didn't choose you to hide. When the dress slid over her skin, Chiara felt the world change. The fabric was cold and heavy, and the silhouette it created made her look taller, leaner, and dangerously desirable. She didn't recognize herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was fiery, despite the paleness of her nervousness. At 7 p.m., she descended the grand staircase, the sound of her heels ringing loud on the marble steps. The driver was waiting, but Dante was beside the car, standing in the shadow of the colonnade. He wore a black tuxedo that seemed fused to his body, the open-collared white shirt revealing the base of his strong neck. He looked perfectly untouchable. He turned the moment she reached the last step. His green eyes, usually cold and calculating, stopped. And stayed. He examined her from head to toe, a slow and intimate study that Chiara felt in her bones. You're on time, he said. It wasn't a compliment, but a statement of fact, though his voice was a shade huskier than usual. Chiara felt the flush rise in her neck, but forced herself not to look away. "It's my duty, Mr. Marchetti." He stepped into the hall light, closing the distance. "Duty is over," he corrected, extending his hand. His palm was large, warm, and unmistakably strong. "For tonight. Now, it's ownership." The air between them became thick, almost painful. She placed her trembling hand in his, feeling an electric shock that caught her off guard. That touch was neither professional nor authoritative, it was intimate. "Why green?" she whispered, feeling out of control. Dante fixed his gaze on her, the corners of his mouth twitching in the subtlest movement she had ever seen. "Green is the color of vigilance. And danger. And, most importantly," he paused, lightly squeezing her hand, the soft touch sending a wave of heat up her arm, "it matches your eyes when the light hits them." The comment was so personal and unexpected that she could barely breathe. He guided her to the car, his hand resting on the small of her back with a possessive heat that burned through the fabric of the dress. When they sat in the back seat, the tension between them was palpable. Their shoulders were almost touching. "Be clear, Chiara," he said, looking at her intensely in the twilight of the car. "The only reason you aren't afraid of me is because you see me as Nana's grandson, not as the Capo. That distinction disappears tonight. You are in my territory now." "I won't let you down," she promised, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know you won't," he replied. "But if anyone tries to question you, ignore you, or touch you inappropriately," he leaned close, his scent of oak and spices enveloping her, "your gray-blue eyes find me. Immediately. I give the orders. I give the protection. I understand, Mr. Marchetti." His thumb brushed her wrist, sending a shiver down her spine. "Please, for one night," he whispered, his voice low and silky, "call me Dante." The request, disguised as a command, was the boundary he was crossing. He was pulling her from her professional role into a dangerous proximity. "Dante," she murmured, feeling strange and excited by the word on her lips. He nodded, his jaw relaxing subtly. "Good. Hold my hand. Don't let go. I'm doing this to show these vultures that I am not alone. And so that you know that, here," he squeezed her hand tightly, "you are the only place I trust. I trust your duty, and I trust your truth." Chiara looked at their joined hands on the dark leather seat. She was terrified of the world that awaited her, but the warmth of his hand was calming her in a way she had never experienced. Nana's caregiver was about to enter a mafia auction, and she was in the guardian's arms. And, strangely, she didn't want to let go. The car stopped in front of the Palazzo Sforza, where hundreds of spotlights dazzled the darkness of the Milanese night. The heritage auction was the most anticipated event, and Dante Marchetti's arrival was always the climax. "Take a deep breath, mia cara," Dante murmured, his voice low and dampened by the noise of the crowd. Chiara felt his hand squeeze hers. "Mia cara. Dear." It was the first Italian word he had addressed to her. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the hall door. The driver opened the door. Dante stepped out first, his imposing figure instantly capturing everyone's attention. Camera flashes exploded. He turned and, with a slow and deliberate movement, helped Chiara out. The emerald green of her dress under the bright lights was magnetic. Her hair, loose in elegant waves, and the touch of subtle makeup transformed her completely. There was a moment of silence in the crowd gathered on the red carpet. The guests stopped whispering to wonder, "Who is she?" Dante placed his hand firmly on the small of her back, guiding her up the staircase. The possession in his touch was unmistakable. He forced her to keep his pace, shoulder to shoulder. "Look forward. Don't look at them," he ordered softly. They are wondering what your story is. We will give them a mystery, not gossip. Chiara felt the gazes burning her skin, judgment, curiosity, and above all, envy. She heard a whisper stand out, "A la bad auntie." It's the caregiver. Dante clenched his teeth but didn't slow his step. Ignore them. They are afraid of my distraction. They can't read you. As they entered the hall, the light from crystal chandeliers flooded the space. Security straightened up. Executives and politicians present turned their heads. Dante was gravity, and Chiara was the object in his orbit. They walked directly to Dante's section, a reserved area near the front of the stage. They were immediately approached by an older man with a crocodile smile, Salvatore Conti, a longtime rival. "Dante." "What a pleasant surprise," Salvatore said, extending his hand to Dante, but his hungry eyes were fixed on Chiara. "You brought a new masterpiece." Dante shook Salvatore's hand and replied dryly, "Salvatore." "Yes. This is my partner, Chiara Rossi. She is not for sale." Salvatore laughed, but there was a predatory gleam in his eyes. He reached out to Chiara, his touch lingering a bit longer than necessary. "Beautiful. What is your role, Cara?" Chiara remembered Dante's warning. She looked at Marchetti, waiting for the cue. Dante's jaw was tight. "Chiara is essential to the family," Dante intervened, his voice cold as ice, pulling Chiara closer to him so that her back hit his chest. The feeling of his strength enveloped her. She is the only one who can see the truth behind the farce. "Something your world doesn't understand, Salvatore." Dante took Chiara's arm and placed it firmly in his, squeezing it with the promise of contained violence. "Don't touch her again, Salvatore. She is under my protection." Dante's touch was possessive and strong, a physical barrier declaring to the whole world, "She is mine." Salvatore swallowed hard, stepping back. "Of course, Dante. May Nana Sophia's jewelry sell well tonight." "Pleasure, Miss Rossi." As soon as Salvatore walked away, Chiara exhaled air she didn't even know she was holding. "Did you see him?" Dante asked, without emotion. The look in his eyes. "He was calculating," she whispered. Dante nodded, the corner of his lips rising almost imperceptibly. "Exactly. You saw the threat. You didn't flinch. That is the truth I bought." He guided her to an isolated table. "Now, sit. I need to perform. And you are my focus." As Dante seated her, he didn't let go of her hand. He leaned in, his mouth near her ear, and whispered, "Relax, mia bellissima. You are doing wonderfully. For one night, just pretend you belong to me. The game is ours." The word "belong" sent a shockwave through Chiara's body. She looked at him, and for the first time, she saw more than the ruthless boss. She saw the man who had chosen her to be his shield on a battlefield, and who would not hesitate to defend her with everything he had. The performance was just beginning, and she was his partner, reluctantly and dangerously, with desire. The auction room was a chamber of glass and gold, filled with wealth and power, but for Chiara, the epicenter of all energy was the man sitting beside her. Dante Marchetti didn't stop touching her. Not in a lewd or overt way, but with a constant and subtle possessiveness that was entirely performative and yet deeply disorienting for her. His hand rested firmly on her thigh under the table or held her hand tightly as he negotiated with other family heads. Every touch was a warning to the world, "This woman is with me." During the business conversations, Chiara maintained the silence she had been commanded. She observed the faces, the lies behind the polished smiles, and the ill-disguised fear the men felt for Dante. He, in turn, never looked away from her for long. Whenever she seemed uncertain, his eyes found hers, green and piercing, a silent reminder of his presence and protection. At one point, a sommelier approached to serve wine, and Dante dismissed him with a nod. "She only drinks water," he informed, without asking Chiara. "I'm not used to being without caffeine," she whispered, taking advantage of the moment he was leaning toward her. He almost smiled, a slight twitch that barely reached his eyes. "I know your habits, Chiara. I read your daily shift reports. Your resting vitals are the only stable ones in this mansion. We won't compromise them for cheap champagne." The confession that he read her reports, knew her habits, her biological rhythm, was a subtle invasion of her privacy that paradoxically made her feel cared for, seen. The peak of the night, however, was when the auction reached the sale of an invaluable jewel from Nonna Sophia's collection. The bidding was fierce between Dante and a Russian baron. As the bidding intensified, the silence at the table became absolute. Chiara felt the tension in Dante, his arm resting on the chair stiff as a rock. Unconsciously, she let go of his hand and placed hers over his clenched fist, a purely instinctive gesture, as she would do with Nana if she were agitated. Dante froze. His gaze flew from his fist to her face. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible, breaking the rigidity of his focus. He stared at her for a long second, and something broke the mask of control on his face. It wasn't anger or surprise, but a momentary vulnerability, as if she had witnessed a moment not meant for the world. He then took her hand and intertwined it with his, the touch now no longer possessive, but dependent. He raised the paddle. 50 million. The auctioneer struck the gavel. The room erupted in applause, and the jewel was Dante's. As people approached to congratulate him, he kept Chiara's hand firm. An exuberant woman, clearly one of Dante's former companions, approached. "Dante. Congratulations, tesoro. Who is this creature?" "So reserved," she said, looking Chiara up and down with a mean smile. Dante didn't give her the satisfaction of a lingering look. "She is the only company I tolerate," he replied, and then turned to Chiara, asking a question in rapid, personal Italian clearly designed to exclude the other woman. "Sei stanca, Angelo? Are you tired, Angel?" The question and the term of endearment, Angel, were an electric shock. Chiara felt the heat rise to her cheeks. "A little," she replied in hesitant Italian. Dante stood up. "We are leaving." He didn't say goodbye to the other woman, he simply ignored her. As he guided her out, his hand again on the small of her back, he whispered near her ear, his voice low, warm, and husky, "You touched me. You broke the rule. You broke my focus." Chiara shivered. I didn't think. It was an instinct. I was trying to calm you." "You did," he replied, stopping momentarily by an isolated column in the hallway, away from prying eyes. He turned to her, his face inches from hers. His breath was warm and scented. "And you made me win. That is the most dangerous intimacy I have ever experienced." He was talking about the auction, but his eyes were on her lips. "Why, Angel?" she whispered, forced to look up. He looked at her with an intensity that made her stagger. "Because you are the only thing that reminds me I don't belong to their hell. You saw me in my fury and you touched me. No one has ever done that." The moment was broken by the sound of security footsteps. They were outside. Dante resumed his pose, but before getting into the car, he pulled Chiara close to him, stealing her breath. "You owe me for the broken rule. And I always collect my debts." He helped her into the car, but the forced intimacy in the hallway left Chiara trembling. She was not just a caregiver or an escort. She was a catalyst for a man desperate for an honest connection in a world of lies, and the price of that honesty would be Chiara's own peace. The ride back to the mansion was silent and charged with a tension that surpassed that of the driver and the guards in the escort. Chiara was nestled in her corner on the leather seat, the warmth of Dante's touch still lingering on her hand and lower back. She could feel his eyes on her, even in the dimness of the car, without needing to look. The silence was overwhelming until Dante spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. Salvatore Conti is a worm. He will ask questions tomorrow. He will try to find out where you came from. You said you were afraid of my world. Why? Chiara felt the urgent need to be honest, to be the truth he was looking for. Because my past is not simple, Dante. I didn't come from a place that tolerates this kind of exposure. She hesitated, biting her lip. And I'm afraid that if someone looks too closely, the problems I left behind will find me here. And that would put Nana Sofia at risk. And consequently, you. Dante moved his hand to the armrest but didn't touch her. My problems are bigger than anything you could have left behind, Angelo, he said, his voice full of authority. This house is a fortress. No one enters here without my permission, not even ghosts of the past. He leaned in, and the darkness of the car seemed to concentrate all his attention on her. But you are right. You owe me for the broken rule. I don't like outstanding debts. Chiara felt her heart flutter. What debt? He watched her, the green of his eyes glowing in the passing streetlights. You conned me. You touched me. You broke my protocol. You made me feel a need I haven't felt in years, trust. The car stopped at the mansion's service entrance, away from the spotlights. Security cleared the way and stepped out quickly. Dante didn't move. He didn't let go. The car door was open, the driver and guards waiting at a respectful distance. My collection is simple, he murmured, approaching, his strong masculine scent invading her space. You take me out of my isolation for one night and make me feel human. Now, remind me why I cared to come back. Before Chiara could process the meaning of that sentence, or how vulnerable she had made him, his mask fell completely. His eyes closed on her face. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of overwhelming passion, but a firm, authoritative, and yet deeply hesitant claim. His lips were warm and firm against hers, demanding a response, testing a limit. His hand rose to her cheek, the touch rough and undeniably tender. Chiara, who had spent years hiding and denying any desire, felt the ground vanish. The shock paralyzed her for a moment, but his touch was an irresistible call. She responded, placing her hand on his neck. The kiss lasted only a moment, a flash of fire in the dark, before he pulled away, breathing heavily, his forehead against hers. That, he whispered, his voice tight, is proof that you don't see me only as Nana's grandson. He straightened up, immediately returning to his guardian posture, but with a trace of disorder in his eyes. Go to your room. Don't return to Nana's shift until your regular time. You need to rest. Her surveillance is reinforced. And call me Dante from now on. In private. He stepped out of the car first, tall and imposing, without looking back. Chiara remained in the car, her legs weak, her lips still tingling. Nana's caregiver had been kissed by guardian Marchetti. The performance was over, but the true dance of power and desire had barely begun. The price of her honesty was not a jewel or money. It was the loss of her invisibility and the forced entry into the dangerous heart of Dante Marchetti. Chiara couldn't sleep. She was back in the employees' wing, but the room that was once a sanctuary of peace now felt like a cage. The emerald green dress hung carefully, a vivid reminder of the woman she had been for one night, and the kiss that had changed her forever. She spent the night tossing and turning, her hand occasionally touching her still tingling lips. Dante's attitude had been clear, that kiss was a mark of possession, a way of ensuring she saw him as the guardian, not just as Nana's grandson. At dawn, she got up before the alarm, put on the dark blue scrubs, and pinned her hair in the tight bun, desperately seeking the familiarity of her role. She needed her duty to feel safe again. When she entered the kitchen at the time of her shift, the change in atmosphere was palpable. The staff whispered. No one looked her directly in the eye, but glances were cast quickly, loaded with gossip and astonishment. Everyone knew. The head of the domestic staff, Signora Lucci, approached her with a look of caution. "Chiara," said Lucci, her voice tight. "Mr. Marchetti informed me. You are relieved of your morning shift with Mrs. Sophia. And of all general duties." Chiara frowned. "Relieved? But Nana needs me in her morning routine. I need to check her medication." "It's not relieved," Lucci corrected, lowering her voice. "It's a new arrangement. He has reinforced the security team in the East Wing. You only return to her service at the regular afternoon time. Until then, he wants you out of sight." Out of sight? Chiara felt panic rising. She didn't want inactivity. Inactivity meant time to think about the auction, the kiss, and the risk of her past. "I am not a prisoner, Signora Lucci. I am an employee." "You are an exception now," Lucci whispered, her gaze fixed on a point behind Chiara. "And he is coming up." "I wouldn't say another word." Chiara turned to see Dante in the kitchen doorway. He wasn't wearing a suit, but dark tailored trousers and a white shirt with the top 2 buttons undone. He looked dangerously casual and wide awake despite the night. The air in the room seemed to condense. "Lucci," Dante said, his voice sharp. "You can go. Leave us alone." Lucci left immediately, almost fleeing. Dante looked at Chiara, his green eyes sweeping over the familiar uniform, the bun, the search for anonymity. "You are ignoring my request for rest," he stated, without apologizing. "I can't rest when I'm worried about your security commitment," she replied, trying to sound only professional. "If you exposed me at the auction, it means I am a weak point. I need to be with Nana. It's my job." He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, looking like a predator evaluating prey. "Your job has changed, Angelo. I didn't keep you by my side so you could go back to being invisible this morning. I kept you to make you important." He stopped a few inches from her. "Last night, Salvatore Conti and at least 3 others discovered you are my blind spot. That means they will try to find a flaw in your story. I can't protect what I don't know. And I don't want you worrying about your shift. My security protocol is my job, not yours." He leaned in, his voice lowering. "And this is your new reality. You are no longer the caregiver. You are my protected. And protected people don't walk around alone, nor do they keep secrets that can be used for blackmail." He brought his thumb to the corner of her mouth, brushing it lightly, a physical reminder of the kiss. "You are going to tell me what made you flee, Chiara. And you will do it now." He wasn't asking, he was commanding. "I need to know who to look for before they get here." The fear of being discovered and the strange attraction to her guardian hit her at the same time. The distance between scrubs and emerald silk seemed vast, but the man in front of her wasn't letting her hide in either. "I can't talk here," she whispered, looking at the door. Dante smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of power. "Of course you can. You are in my kitchen, and I am the only guardian that matters. Follow me." He turned and left the kitchen. Chiara had no choice. She followed him. She knew that the truth about her past was about to collide violently with Dante Marchetti's world. Dante led Chiara to his private sanctuary, an office on the top floor of the mansion. The space was imposing, dark walls, built-in bookshelves, and a massive mahogany desk covered only by a monitor and a security terminal. The only natural light came from a large window with a panoramic view of Milan. This was not just an office, it was the control room of his empire. He guided her to 2 brown leather armchairs, offering her a glass of ice water, a thoughtful gesture that contrasted with his cold posture. "Sit down, Angelo," he ordered, sitting in the opposite armchair. He didn't sit in his boss's chair, but closer to her, on the same level. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Who is chasing you and why?" Chiara squeezed the water glass, feeling small and insignificant in her work uniform in the midst of such power. She knew that by speaking, she would be giving up her last barrier of protection, anonymity. It's not about debts or money, Dante," she began, her voice low. "It's about having seen too much." She took a deep breath, forcing herself to look into his green eyes, which were watching her with intense concentration. "I'm not Italian. I'm American. And my full name is Chiara Rossi. I fled New York 2 years ago. I had a normal life. I was a nursing technician in a hospital, but I also had a night shift at a small cafe to pay my bills." "Continue," he encouraged, his voice deep and patient. "At that cafe, there was a regular customer. A man named Marcus Thorne," she continued. "He was charming, well-dressed, always gave me generous tips. He tried to flirt, but I turned him down. One night, I closed the cafe late. I was crossing the back alley where they disposed of the trash." Chiara's eyes filled with revived fear, and she had to stop to steady her voice. "I heard screams. I saw Marcus and 2 other men. They were coercing a businessman. It wasn't a robbery. It was punishment. They were threatening him about the sale of a property. And then, Marcus, he broke the man's hand with a hammer." Dante's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed dangerously. He understood this language. It was the language of power and coercion. "Did they see you?" Dante asked. "Marcus saw me," she confirmed, a silent tear running down her face. "I screamed and knocked over a trash can." He smiled. That smile, it was the smile of a predator who had just seen his next prey. "He told me, if you open your mouth, your family, your grandmother, they'll miss more than just your absence. Do you have family in the US?" Dante asked, the question quick and practical. "No. They died years ago," she whispered. "It was my biggest fear. He used my only weakness, my emptiness, against me. I knew he would make me disappear if I stayed." "Marcus Thorne," Dante repeated, his pronunciation of the name loaded with contempt. "Who is he connected to?" "An organization, I think. I never knew the details, but they seemed very powerful in real estate," Chiara explained. "I sold everything I had, changed my last name to Rossi, and used the money to come to Europe, where I thought his influence wouldn't reach. I hid here, under your name, because I knew the Marchetti mansion was one of the safest places in the world." She finally raised her head, the confession finished. "My fear, Dante, is that if Salvatore Conti investigates, if he discovers my real identity, and if he uses it against you, Marcus Thorne will know where to find me. I'll be a target, and by extension, your grandmother." Dante remained silent for a long moment. He looked out the window at the city. When he turned back to her, the guardian was fully in control. The anger in his eyes was not directed at Chiara, but at whoever dared to threaten what was his. "You were right," he said, his voice like basalt. "You are important enough to cause a war. And you are smart enough to hide here." He stood up and walked to the terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard. "I have an enemy, Chiara. One who is threatening my most important acquisition in Rome. And he has tentacles in New York. Thorne is his pawn." He clenched his fist and turned to her. Marcus Thorne is not going to touch you. He is not going to touch Nana. And he is not going to touch me. He approached her, his eyes burning with determination. From now on, your secret is my secret. Your safety is my top priority. You are no longer a caregiver. You are a key piece in my protection. And no one is going to take you from me. He took her chin, forcing her to face him. I don't run from threats. I eliminate them. But to do that, he brushed his thumb across her soft skin. You must promise you will never keep anything from me again. I promise, she whispered. Good. Now, what do you know about Thorne's links with the Italian mafia? Tell me everything your Angelo intuition tells you. War had been declared, and Chiara Rossi was officially at the center of the Marchetti empire. Dante walked to his large desk and turned on the main monitor. The screen lit up, showing a detailed map of the New York metropolitan area with several properties marked. He had absorbed Chiara's confession, and instead of panic, there was only strategy in his eyes. Marcus Thorne, Dante murmured, turning back to Chiara. If he didn't use you for money, he'll use you to distract me. He's an agent of disruption. I don't know much about the Italian connections, Dante, Chiara admitted, feeling exhausted but relieved to have spoken. But when I was fleeing, I heard Thorne mention a name, the Falcon. Dante stopped abruptly. The only sound in the room was the low hum of the terminal. The Falcon, he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. He turned to her, his gaze calculating. Are you sure about that? Yes. He was on a phone call, screaming about a real estate deal that had gone wrong, and said, tell the Falcon to resolve this before winter arrives. The name was the missing link. The Falcon was the nickname of a Milanese financier, Carlo Ferri, known to be the clean facade for a rival Marchetti faction contesting Dante's same acquisition in Rome. You are a gold mine of information, Angelo, Dante said, returning to the computer. Marcus Thorne is not the pawn. He is the bait. The Falcon is who is behind him. He quickly typed commands, and a face appeared on the screen, a middle-aged man with cold eyes and a forced smile, Carlo Ferri. Dante then pulled security data and intelligence reports. The threat was no longer in New York, it was in Milan, much closer than Chiara imagined. It's time to stop pretending you are a simple caregiver, Dante declared, turning to her. You have been compromised. The only way to ensure Thorne and the Falcon don't use you against my family is to take you out of sight. Completely. Chiara shivered. Take me out of sight? I'm not going to a hideout or being sent out of Italy. No, he denied, shaking his head, his intense gaze fixed on her. You aren't going anywhere. I need to keep you where I can see you and protect you. He approached her again, stopping inches away. He used physical proximity to impose his will, and Chiara could barely breathe. You will do Nana's morning rounds and evening routine to maintain the facade. But during the day, you will stay in the West Wing. In my room. Chiara turned pale. In your room? Dante, that is professionally and personally impossible. The staff, your grandmother, it will create a scandal. They're already whispering. Let them whisper, he countered, his voice relentless. They can think I've made you my mistress, my favorite. That is better than them thinking you are a blackmail weapon they can steal. Scandal protects me. Your confinement protects me. And what will Mrs. Sophia think? Dante softened his expression for a brief moment. She knows I'm playing a game. She trusts me. And she trusts you. I'll tell her you are there to help organize confidential documents. He smiled, a dark smile. She is a Marchetti. She'll understand the theater. He took her chin again, but this time the touch was a statement of necessity. You won't sleep with me unless I invite you. But you will stay there. My room has the best security in the house. Sensors, bulletproof windows, and, most importantly, me. His room was the fortress. He was confining her, but also elevating her to his most intimate level of protection. You are taking away my job, Dante, she whispered, the loss of her identity hitting her. I'm saving your life and my grandmother's, Angelo, he corrected. And I'm giving you a new job, you are now my trusted consultant. You will tell me everything that your intuition, free from fear, can pick up. You help me map the predator, and I keep Thorn in America. He let her go. The decision was made. Go to your room and pack a small bag. Tell Lucci I've summoned you for personal filing work in the West Wing. And take off those scrubs. In my wing, you'll wear what I tell you. Dante called his security team, speaking in rapid Italian, his instructions clear and military. He was preparing for war, and Chiara was the most vital piece on his board. Chiara felt the adrenaline of the fight replacing the fear. He was asking her to trust him completely in exchange for her safety. I'll do it, Dante, she said, her voice firm. But if I stay in your room, I need to know this arrangement is about security, and not about the kiss. Dante turned, his eyes fixed on her, and he gave the most honest and dangerous smile she had ever seen. Don't lie to yourself, Chiara, he said, his voice full of unadulterated desire. The kiss is the reason I want you close. But your secret is the reason I need you to stay. Chiara obeyed. Packing a small bag in her servants' quarters felt like the most surreal thing she had ever done. She packed a few essentials, unable to shake the feeling that she was being promoted to a golden captivity. She wasn't a prisoner, but she wasn't free either. Instead of feeling safe, she felt like a newly marked target. When she went down to the staff hall, wearing dark jeans and a simple blouse, Signora Lucci intercepted her, her face tight with restraint. Mr. Marchetti notified me. Personal filing, Lucci said, the quotes almost audible. Chiara, you know what people will say about the West Wing. I know my duty, Signora, Chiara replied, keeping her voice professional and cold, copying Dante's tone. My obligations are to Mrs. Sophia and, now, to Mr. Marchetti. Despite her composure, the fear was real. Moving to the West Wing, Dante's private area, meant abandoning the protection of invisibility for good. Arriving at the family's private elevator, a muscular security guard awaited her. He accompanied her without a word to the top floor. The West Wing was different from the rest of the mansion, darker, quieter, the decor in shades of gray and charcoal with brushed steel details. It was the definition of minimalist power. Dante's room was vast and functional, but strangely devoid of personal adornments. A king-size bed dominated the center, but the real focus was the discreet security screens and the communication terminal. Dante was on the phone, speaking rapidly in Italian. He wore the morning's black tailored trousers and was shirtless, revealing a tense physique, the result of Spartan discipline, with faint scars near his ribs, marks of his territory. The sight of him, so vulnerable and strong at the same time, made the air leave Chiara's lungs. He ended the call abruptly and turned to her, showing no embarrassment at his half-naked state. Chiara. The East Wing is under surveillance. The Falcon is already sniffing around. I need you focused, he said, his guardian voice. He took a white silk shirt from a chair and put it on. Your bag, he indicated. Put it in the closet. Don't worry, I prepared the adjacent guest room for you, next to my office. But you'll spend most of your time here with me. Thank you, she murmured, looking away. Dante noticed her discomfort with the new intimacy. He approached, and his gaze forced her to face him. You don't need to look away, Angelo, he said, his voice a shade softer. I am your guardian. You have seen me in weakness and in strength. I have no secrets from you, and I expect the same. I have no secrets anymore, Dante, she replied firmly, remembering her promise. Great. Then let's fix the appearances, he said, walking to the closet. He opened the door to a section containing a series of designer dresses, all in dark colors and rich fabrics. These arrived. I won't let them think my secret partner wears the staff uniform. You need to dress as if you belong on this floor. He picked out a black high-necked cashmere dress, simple and expensive. Wear this. You are my confidant. Your appearance needs to be discreet but undeniably Marchetti. As she headed to the bathroom to change, he stopped her with his voice. Chiara. She turned. My bedroom door is programmed to lock automatically. It only opens with my biometrics or yours. And there's a silent alert system for security should you feel threatened, he explained. But understand this, if you go to the guest room, security is lower. If you are in my bed, you are safe. I won't deceive you. I haven't slept in 2 days. I won't touch you unless you invite me, but I want you where I can be sure you are breathing. He gave her an intense look, full of fatigue and determination. Your body is safe. But your mind and your heart, those belong to the war now. Your first task is to help me analyze this data. He pointed to the monitors. Chiara nodded, holding the dress. She felt completely overwhelmed but also vital. She was the piece he needed, and the only way to protect herself was to accept the new identity he had imposed on her. Nana's caregiver was dead. In her place was Chiara Rossi, the Guardian's protected, dressed in cashmere and guarding Milan's most dangerous secret. Chiara stepped out of the bathroom wearing the black cashmere dress. It fell perfectly, the fabric subtly expensive and elegant, matching the austere minimalism of the West Wing. Dressed like this, she looked less like a runaway employee and more like the confidant of a powerful man. Dante was hunched over the desk, monitors displaying complex diagrams of properties and cash flows from New York and Milan. He didn't look up immediately. What do you know about Ferry's acquisition in Rome? She asked, instantly entering trusted consultant mode. Dante raised his head, and a flash of satisfaction crossed his eyes. She was focused. Ferry, the Falcon, is trying to buy the Fidelis conglomerate, he explained, pointing to a chart on the screen. It's a multi-billion-dollar deal that would give me total control over Italy's coastal infrastructure. The government is watching, and any stain on my reputation could cost me the bid. Thorn, his pawn, is the stain. Thorn doesn't act alone, Chiara said, approaching the desk, feeling the adrenaline of analyzing the danger. He is the muscle and the intimidation. He doesn't act unless he's sure there are no witnesses. Breaking that man's hand was a warning to other buyers. Dante nodded, his eyes fixed on the New York map. He is reckless but effective. My problem is distance. How did a New York pawn know you were hidden in my mansion in Milan? He didn't know, Chiara replied, her mind back on the night of the auction. Salvatore Conti knew. Conti was looking for weaknesses, and he saw our performance. He must have triggered contacts who dug into who the caregiver in the green dress was. And if Conti links my caregiver name to my Vance identity, he'll link Thorn to Ferry. It's a domino effect. Dante drummed his fingers on the table, a dry and authoritative sound. Thank you. You confirmed my suspicion. Conti is our leak. He's playing against me. He wants to bring me down to steal the Rome acquisition for Ferry. He stood up and walked to her. The proximity was intense. Do you see the importance of being here? You are the only person who holds the key to their line of attack. Chiara felt the pressure of his gaze but stood firm. And what will we do with Conti? He won't stop. He'll try to get close to Nana to make sure it's me. Dante shook his head, returning to the mission. No one touches my Nana. My security will make a ghost of him. But we need bait. And you, Angelo, are our decoy. He leaned in, and the intensity was almost overwhelming. You will remain here, protected. I will make a move to make Ferry believe he is in control, that he has wounded me. I'll leak that I'm distracted, disorganized. And that my focus is on you. That will make Thorn come after me, she whispered, her throat tight. No, Dante countered, his eyes full of cold determination. It will make Thorn feel safe enough to enter my territory. And when he crosses my family's border, I'll break him. Literally. He stepped away, picked up the phone, and began giving military orders in Italian. He was articulating his war strategy, using Chiara's attraction and scandal as part of the cover. I've organized your guard. My cousin, Sofia Marchetti, arrives from Florence tomorrow. She is a brilliant lawyer and, more importantly, she is my only female confidant. She will bridge the gap with Nana and ensure your cover. You are the new family ethics consultant, brought in to clean up my name. He stopped and looked at her. Do you trust me, Chiara? I'll put you closer to danger than ever before. But I swear, no one will come out unscathed except you. Chiara didn't need time to think. The kiss, the confession, the trust he had placed in her, it all added up. He was a guardian, and she was his key piece. I trust you, Dante, she said, her voice firm. I'm in. Tell me the plan. Step by step. The smile he gave her was meager but loaded with appreciation, the kind of smile a boss gives a loyal ally. From that moment, Chiara stopped being the caregiver and fully assumed the role of secret ally. War was about to begin. The next 2 days were an intense immersion into Dante Marchetti's dark world. Chiara and he spent hours on end in the West Wing office. She analyzed, he acted. She was the moral compass, he, the implacable executor. They ate light meals brought by security and slept in irregular shifts. Chiara chose to sleep in the adjacent room but always left the door unlocked, a silent permission. Dante, invariably, was at her door before closing his eyes. On the morning of the 3rd day, Dante's cousin, Sofia Marchetti, arrived from Florence. Sof was an astute, elegant lawyer and exhibited the same discreet authority as Dante but with more warmth and humor. She showed no surprise seeing Chiara dressed in cashmere in Dante's office. Ah, so it's you, the legend, Sof said, extending her hand to Chiara with a genuine smile. Chiara. Dante hasn't stopped talking about your unparalleled intuition. I'm sophomore. And I'm relieved you're real. I thought he'd made you up to get out of a boring engagement. Chiara smiled, feeling a bit more at ease. I'm the new family ethics consultant. Actually, I'm your Nana's caregiver. I know, Sof winked. And I know ethics consultant is code for vital piece in Dante's chess game. Nana is bored but totally on board. She gave us her blessing for the horror show. Dante watched the interaction from his desk, approving the quick connection. Sof is here to give you cover, Chiara. She'll bridge the gap with the East Wing and keep Nana informed. More importantly, she is your public distraction. The horror show began that night. Dante organized a strictly private business dinner at the mansion with 2 important allies, the type of event that required him to exhibit confidence and control. And for the first time, he demanded that Chiara be at his side, not just as a consultant, but as his partner. Before dinner, Dante found Chiara in her room. She had tried to dress in the black cashmere again to maintain discretion. No, Dante said, entering and closing the door. He walked to the closet and pulled out a navy blue silk dress, the fabric as deep as the night. You are my distraction, not my shadow. Wear this. And your hair, He lightly ran his hand along the side of her head, let it fall a little. Chiara obeyed. When she stepped out of the bathroom, the navy silk hugged her figure, and her hair was softer. Dante watched her with breathtaking intensity. His green eyes were a mix of pride and possessiveness. "Perfect," he murmured. He approached, and this time, his touch was not a debt collection, but an affirmation. He took his thumb and forefinger to the line of her jaw and kissed her. Not a kiss of overwhelming passion, but a kiss of preparation, a seal of possession for the spectacle to come. "Remember the rules," he whispered against her lips. "You are no longer the caregiver. You are mine. And tonight, you help me lie." At dinner, their performance was flawless. Dante was expansive but constantly subtly protective of Chiara. He kept her close, touching her arm, leaning in to whisper in her ear, implying that he was distracted and consumed by her rather than focused on business. At the end of the night, one of the allies questioned Dante about the sudden involvement, concerned about his focus on the Rome bid. "Dante," said the ally, "are you focused on Fidelis? Or is the signorina here taking your attention?" Dante looked at Chiara with a forced tenderness that made her stomach turn. He squeezed her hand and replied with a dangerous smile, looking directly at the ally. "My attention is where I choose it to be," he said, but the squeeze on her hand was real, a promise. "And if I lose the bid, it will be because the only thing that matters to me now is my peace. And she is my peace." The lie was convincing. Chiara felt the power of that statement. She was not just a consultant, but the pretext for Dante's apparent vulnerability, the perfect bait to lure the falcon. When they returned to the West Wing, the tension between them was not just from the danger, but from the forced intimacy of their shared lie. Dante's horror show began to take effect. In the hours following the dinner, news of Dante Marchetti's new favorite, Nonna Sophia's former caregiver, spread through the Milanese elite like wildfire. The narrative was clear: the guardian was distracted, focused on a sudden and reckless attraction, neglecting the all-important Fidelis acquisition in Rome. Dante and Chiara were again in the office at dawn. Chiara, still in the navy blue dress, watched Dante as he read a newly arrived intelligence report, the soft light from the monitor reflecting in his eyes. "It worked," Dante murmured with cold satisfaction. He turned to her, showing her the tablet. "What does it say?" Chiara asked, approaching the desk. "Salvatore Conti is agitated. He tried to contact 2 of my allies, seeking confirmation of my recklessness," he explained. More importantly, the intelligence team intercepted unencrypted communications linked to Ferry. Ferry is feeling confident. He believes the scandal is real and that I am losing focus. "That means our "I love you" at dinner was convincing," Chiara commented, feeling a shiver. Their performance had been so intense that it was hard to distinguish acting from reality. Dante narrowed his eyes. "We didn't say I love you, Chiara. But the most potent lie we can sell to my world is that the peace you offer me is more valuable than power." He looked at her, and the intensity of his gaze made her heart race. "And for that to work, we need your past to move." "Marcus Thorne," she whispered, feeling a cold fear in her spine. "Yes. Ferry is smelling victory and pulling your strings," Dante confirmed. "The next step is to lure Thorne to Milan, or at least to Europe, to confirm if you are indeed the witness he saw in the alley. Thorne needs visual proof." He approached the screen, which now displayed a complex risk analysis. "I'm making the mansion a mirage of vulnerability. Our men will miss a shift in the East Wing, and Nana will let slip to Soph, who will leak to a contact of Conti that you are taking care of Dante's most intimate personal needs in the West Wing." Chiara flushed violently at the suggestion. "Dante, they'll think that you are my mistress, Chiara," he interrupted, relentless. "I said this was a game of appearances. A sexual scandal is the best smoke screen against a blackmail charge." Conti will never consider you a murder witness if he believes you are a sexual distraction. It's their misogyny working in our favor. He approached, and the gleam in his eyes was not of desire, but of calculated strategy. You'll have to get used to the forced intimacy, Angelo. This is your shield. And our next step on the board. He took her hand and brought it to his lips, kissing her knuckles, but this time the kiss was long and deliberate, the tip of his tongue lightly brushing her skin. Chiara felt the heat rise up her arm. "Do you need me tonight, Dante?" she asked, her voice husky, trying to understand if he was asking for protection or intimacy. He released her hand slowly. "I need you breathing beside me in the safest place in the house. I don't trust locked doors or guards. I trust your presence. And you trust me." He pointed to the bedroom door. "Go. I'll sleep in an hour." Chiara went to the door but hesitated, looking back. He was looking at the screen, but his eyes were empty, focused on something distant and heavy. He looked exhausted. "Dante," she said before opening the door. "I know you don't sleep because of me. Why don't you sleep in my bed?" He looked up, and the surprise was palpable. "What?" "You said my body is safe," she replied. "But you aren't. You're exhausted. You need a guardian too. And I trust you'll keep your promise that it's only for safety. I trust the guardian." A moment of thick silence filled the room. Dante's control mask cracked. He looked at his vast, cold bedroom, then at the small, determined woman in the blue dress. "You're right," he said, his voice tight and low. "I need a guardian. I need you by my side." He walked toward the bedroom door but stopped at the threshold, looking at her. "Don't lie to yourself, Chiara. You are inviting me into your danger. And you are inviting me into yours," she replied, determined. He nodded, his eyes an electric green. "Then come. It's time to sleep with the enemy." The guest room adjacent to Dante's suite was luxurious but suddenly felt too small for his presence. Chiara lay down, her heart hammering against her ribs, as she heard the metallic sound of Dante's watch being placed on the nightstand. He didn't turn on the main light, only the bluish glow from the security monitors in the office crossed the crack in the door, creating long, dramatic shadows. Dante lay down beside her, keeping a respectful distance, but the king-size bed seemed to shrink with the heat emanating from his body. He still wore the tailored trousers, having removed only the white shirt. Chiara could hear his breathing, heavy, irregular, the breathing of a man who carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders. "You are the only person who dared to give me an order in my own house," Dante whispered in the dark, his voice vibrating through the mattress to her. "It wasn't an order," Chiara replied, looking at the ceiling. "It was a diagnosis. You are operating on reserve, Dante. If Thorn or Fairy attack tomorrow, I need my guardian whole." There was a sudden movement. Dante turned on his side, propping his head on his hand, watching her profile in the gloom. Always the nurse. Always caring for others' wounds. "But who cares for you, Chiara?" Chiara turned her head to face him. The proximity was dangerous. She could see the scars on his chest, marks of old battles, and the raw intensity in his eyes. "I learned to take care of myself in that cafe alley in New York," she said, her voice firm. "But here, I feel like I don't have to fight alone anymore." Dante reached out slowly as if testing a force field. His fingers brushed her cheek, descending the line of her neck until they stopped over her collarbone, where her pulse jumped frantically. The touch was electric, a mixture of tenderness and a contained hunger he could no longer hide under the strategy mask. "I said you were the bait," he murmured, his voice lowering to a dangerously husky tone. "But the truth is that I am the only one who was captured." He leaned closer, the scent of sandalwood and the heat of his skin enveloping her completely. This war we are waging, it isn't just against Fairy or Thorn. It's against what I feel every time I see you in those damn scrubs or that blue silk. I want to burn this world down to ensure you never feel fear again. Chiara felt tears sting her eyes. No one had ever promised to be her shield so absolutely. She reached her hand to his face, feeling the roughness of his stubble. Then burn it, Dante. But don't lose yourself in the fire. Dante resisted no longer. He broke the final distance and kissed her. This time, there was no performance, no debt, and no protocol. It was a kiss of total surrender, loaded with months of built-up tension and the urgency of two survivors who had found a safe harbor in each other. His hand slid to the back of her neck, pulling her closer, while Chiara lost herself in the strength and need of this man whom the world feared, but who now trembled under her touch. In the middle of the kiss, Dante pulled away just an inch, foreheads pressed together, both breathless. If I continue, he warned, his voice tight, there will be no going back to anonymity. You won't just be my protected. You will be my queen. And queens suffer the attacks first. I already died once as a nurse, Chiara replied, her eyes shining with new determination. I'd rather live dangerously as yours. He pulled her into a tight hug, hiding his face in her neck, and for that night, the guardian finally slept. He didn't dream of betrayals or bids. He dreamed of Chiara's touch. Meanwhile, miles away in a dark office in Milan, Carlo Ferri, the Falcon, looked at a blurry photo of Chiara getting out of Dante's SUV. He smiled, picking up the phone. Contact Thorn, Ferri ordered. Tell him his nurse found a new patient. It's time we pay a house call. The calm before the storm was over. The Milanese sun had not yet crossed the horizon when the security terminal on Dante's headboard emitted a low but persistent beep. Dante woke up instantly, the protective instinct overriding the fatigue. Chiara, still wrapped in his arms, felt the change in his body's tension even before opening her eyes. Stay here, Dante ordered, his voice husky, already reaching for the terminal. Chiara sat up in bed, pulling the sheets against her chest. On the monitors, gray-toned images showed movement at the mansion's outer gates. It wasn't a direct attack, but a provocation. An unidentified car had left a package at the feet of the main guardhouse. Dante dressed quickly, eyes fixed on the screen while talking on the radio to Ethan, his head of security. Open with biological and explosive containment protocol. Now. Minutes later, the image of a brown envelope appeared on Dante's tablet. Inside, there were no bombs, but something worse, a Polaroid photo of Chiara, taken that same morning, through the window of the room where they now were. The long-range lens had captured the exact moment Dante pressed his forehead against hers. Behind the photo, a message written with calligraphic perfection. The Falcon watches the nest. And the Wolf of New York has just landed at Malpensa. He's here, Chiara whispered, her voice trembling at the sight of the photo. Marcus Thorn is on Italian soil. Dante punched the mahogany table, but his voice remained icy. He made the fatal mistake. He stepped out of the shadows of American law into my territory, where laws are written by me. Soph entered the room without knocking, her face pale. Dante, Salvatore Conti has just called an emergency meeting with the Fidelis board. He's going to claim you are emotionally compromised and that the family's security is at risk due to an unidentified foreign witness. He's going to try to use Chiara to force your resignation from the bid. Ferry's plan was brilliant. Thorn would eliminate the witness physically, while Conti would eliminate Dante politically. They think I'm the target, said Dante, turning to the two women. A predatory smile appeared on his lips, the green gleam in his eyes more lethal than ever. But they forgot that a guardian is most dangerous when defending his heart. Dante walked to the armored cabinet and took out a leather briefcase. Soph, take Chiara to the East Wing. Meet with Nana. She knows what to do. Chiara, You are going to wear your nurse's uniform one last time. Chiara frowned. What? Why? Because Thorn expects to find a queen hidden under silk, Dante explained, holding her face with both hands. But he's going to find the nurse he underestimated. We're going to give them exactly what they want, an opportunity. We're going to leak that you are transferring Nana to a private clinic due to instability at the mansion. We're going to lure Thorn out of Fairy's hideout and into the open path. You're going to use me as real bait now, Chiara stated, not with fear, but with a somber acceptance. This time, Dante promised, kissing her with a fierce urgency, I'll be on the trigger. Thorn won't get within 10 meters of you. As Chiara put on her dark blue scrubs again, feeling the weight of responsibility, she realized the emerald green silk armor had been replaced by something stronger, the will to fight. The Marchetti mansion became a hive of militarized activity. Nana Sophia's transfer convoy was being prepared. The wolf hunt had begun, and the streets of Milan were about to witness why Dante Marchetti was the only guardian that mattered. The convoy of 3 armored SUVs left the Marchetti mansion gates under a fine rain starting to wash the cobblestone streets of Milan. In the center vehicle, Chiara sat beside Nana Sophia. Chiara wore her blue uniform, but under the fabric, she felt the icy weight of a state-of-the-art bulletproof vest. Nana Sophia held Chiara's hand with surprising strength for her age. Keep your chin up, little one, the matriarch whispered. Dante never loses what is his. And today, he is hunting to clear our name. In Chiara's hidden earpiece, Dante's voice echoed, cold and mechanical, they bit the bait. 2 black cars following us since via Dante. Thorn is in the second vehicle. Chiara, get ready. We are diverting to the Brera district. The plan was to lure Thorn into the narrow, labyrinthine streets of Brera, where Dante's surveillance technology had total control and where Fairy's firepower would be neutralized by the geography. Suddenly, the SUV ahead of the convoy braked sharply. A cargo truck crossed the intersection, blocking the way. Out of the rain trail, the 2 black cars accelerated, surrounding Chiara's vehicle. Armed men jumped out, but one stood out, Marcus Thorn. He wore no mask. His confidence in Fairy and his own impunity was so vast that he wanted the last face Chiara saw to be his. Thorn walked toward the SUV's bulletproof glass, pointing a large-caliber weapon. He smiled, the same predatory smile that haunted Chiara's nightmares in New York. Get out of the car, his voice echoed from outside. Over the radio, Dante gave the final order, now. What happened next was a choreography of calculated violence. The truck blocking the street wasn't Fairy's, it was Dante's Trojan horse. The sides of the truck bed fell, revealing Ethan and an elite team of Marchetti shooters. But the true shock came from above. Dante was in none of the SUVs. He emerged from the roof of one of Brera's historic buildings, descending a rappel cable with lethal agility. He landed silently behind Thorn. Before the Wolf of New York could pull the trigger against Chiara's glass, Dante delivered a blow that broke Thorn's wrist, sending the weapon flying. The sound of the snapping bone was muffled by the roar of engines and the sound of silencers eliminating Fairy's other henchmen. Chiara watched, her heart in her throat, as Dante pinned Thorn to the icy ground. Dante wore no gloves. He wanted to feel the victory. He pressed his knee into Thorn's back and leaned over his ear. You made the mistake of thinking she was alone, Dante growled, his voice audible even to Chiara through the glass. In New York, she was a witness. In Milan, she is my life. And I leave no survivors on my battlefield. Dante looked at the SUV, his green eyes meeting Chiara's for a brief second through the dark glass. In that look, there was no tycoon, only the man who had gone to hell to get her. Dante pulled Thorn by the hair and dragged him into the shadows of the truck, where Marchetti justice would be done away from the public eye. Ethan approached Chiara's car and opened the door. It's clear, miss. Mr. Marchetti sent a message. Ethan handed a small device to Chiara. It was Thorne's personal phone. On it, a call was active. On the display, the name, the Falcon. Chiara picked up the phone, her hand trembling but her voice firm. Carlo Ferri? There was silence on the other end. Then Ferri's voice, trembling for the first time, "Where is Thorne?" "The wolf has fallen," Chiara replied, looking at Dante, who was walking toward her, covered by the rain and victorious fury. "And the guardian is coming to get the Falcon." Dante reached the car, took the phone from Chiara's hand, and simply crushed it under his boot. He pulled her out of the car, ignoring protocol, the rain, and the guards, and hugged her so tightly that Chiara finally felt the past had been buried under the asphalt of Milan. "It's over," he whispered into her hair. "Marcus Thorne will never say your name again." But Chiara knew that although Thorne was eliminated, Carlo Ferri still held Salvatore Conti's card on the board. The physical war was won, but the battle for the Marchetti Empire would reach its climax in a few hours, in the Fidelis boardroom. Only 3 hours after the confrontation in Brera, Fidelis headquarters in Milan was under unbearable tension. On the 30th floor, Italy's most powerful men were gathered around a glass table, listening to Salvatore Conti distill his poison. "Dante Marchetti has lost his mind," Conti said, gesturing with hands trembling with excitement. "He has turned our security into a street show. He is hiding a foreign fugitive, a common nurse, putting all our interests at risk for a personal obsession. I call for an immediate vote for his dismissal and the transfer of the bid to Carlo Ferri." Carlo Ferri, sitting in the back, maintained a victorious smile, although he was restless at not being able to contact Thorne. Suddenly, the boardroom's double doors were kicked open. Dante Marchetti entered. He was no longer in scrubs or casual clothes. He wore a charcoal gray suit, impeccable, with the posture of an emperor returning from conquest. But what shocked the room was not his presence, but who he brought by his side. Chiara Rossi walked with her head held high. She didn't wear the blue uniform, nor the emerald dress. She wore a white women's suit, austere and powerful, with her hair in an impeccable bun. She held a black leather folder with the Marchetti crest. "Sorry for the delay, gentlemen," Dante said, his voice echoing like calm thunder. "I had to deal with a pest control problem in the streets of Brera." Conti turned pale, standing up. "Dante, you have no right to bring this woman here. She is proof of your negligence." Dante walked to the head of the table but didn't sit down. He placed his hand on Chiara's shoulder, a gesture of public and unquestionable partnership. "This woman is not a negligence. She is the new head of intelligence and integrity for the Marchetti Group." A murmur of shock ran through the room. Chiara stepped forward and opened the folder. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and without a trace of fear. "In the last 2 hours, with the help of Dr. Sav Marchetti and federal contacts in New York, we have compiled the full history of Marcus Thorne. A criminal who, interestingly, was funded by an offshore account linked directly to Carlo Ferri and Salvatore Conti." She slid photos and documents across the glass table. Photos of Conti meeting Ferri in secret. Bank records. And finally, Thorne's recorded confession before being handed over to the authorities. "Mr. Conti was not trying to protect the bid," Chiara continued, staring at Conti. "He was trying to hand Italy's infrastructure over to a man who uses hitmen to close real estate deals. I am the living proof of Ferri's crimes, and now, I am the voice that will destroy them." The silence was absolute. Carlo Ferri stood up to flee, but Ethan and Soph were already at the door with the financial police. Dante leaned over the table, his green eyes fixed on Conti. "You said I was compromised, Salvatore. You were right. I am committed to the truth. And the truth is that you are finished." Security escorted Ferri and Conti out under the cold gaze of the board. The Fidelis contract was signed right there, but Dante barely looked at the papers. When the room finally emptied, leaving only him and Chiara, the silence changed tone. It was no longer the silence of war, but of realization. "You were incredible," Dante whispered, approaching her. Soph was right. "You aren't just a caregiver. You are the brain of my operation." Chiara relaxed her shoulders for the first time in years. "I did what needed to be done to protect my family, Dante. And now, I know my place isn't hidden in an alley." Dante pulled her close, ignoring the security cameras and the city below them. "Your place is by my side. In silk, in cotton, or in scrubs. You are the only one who keeps me standing." He kissed her in the center of the boardroom, the final seal of a new empire. The caregiver who fled a murderer in New York had become the most powerful woman in Milan. Weeks had passed since the boardroom doors of Fidelis closed on the fate of Conti and Ferry. Milan had calmed down, but the Marchetti mansion was undergoing a profound transformation. Chiara no longer occupied the small room in the staff wing. Her things, now a mix of comfortable scrubs and designer clothes chosen by Soph, were permanently installed in the master suite of the West Wing. That morning, the winter sun streamed through the kitchen windows, but Chiara wasn't cleaning counters. She was sitting at the table with Nana Sofia, both drinking coffee and reviewing the matriarch's new health protocols. "You have a natural talent for strategy, Chiara," Nana commented, watching the young woman. "Dante is calmer. He doesn't look at the shadows anymore as if he expects an attack. You gave him something money can't buy, peace." Chiara smiled, feeling the warmth of the discreet commitment ring on her finger. "He gave me my life back, Sophia. It's the least I can do." Dante entered the kitchen wearing a linen shirt and looking younger than Chiara had ever seen him. He leaned in and kissed his grandmother's forehead before stopping behind Chiara's chair. His hands rested on her shoulders, a touch that was now familiar and necessary. "Soph just called," Dante announced, his voice vibrating with a tone of satisfaction. "Thorne's extradition has been completed. He'll spend the rest of his days in a maximum security prison in the U.S. The Falcon and Conti have lost everything they had. The Rome bid is officially in our hands." Chiara sighed, feeling the last knot of tension in her chest unravel. "It's finally over." "Almost everything," Dante said, exchanging a knowing look with his grandmother. "There's an event next week. It's not an auction, nor a business meeting. It's the inauguration of the Rossi Marchetti Foundation in New York. A center for witness protection and support for health professionals." Chiara's eyes widened. "Dante, you named the foundation after me?" "I promised you'd never hide again," he whispered near her ear. "I want the world to know that the woman they underestimated now protects others like her." However, while the couple celebrated the victory, a new envelope arrived at Ethan's security office. It wasn't a death threat, nor a surveillance photo. It was an elegant invitation on black silk paper, from a family that had until then remained neutral, the Valentis of Venice. Dante opened the envelope under Chiara's watchful eye. Inside, there was only one sentence: "The Guardian of Milan has found his queen. We hope she is as strong as they say, for Venice is sinking and we need a nurse for our own secrets." Dante looked at Chiara, his expression suddenly serious. The world of mafia and business never stopped spinning. One enemy fell so that another could test the new defenses. "It looks like the New York vacation will have to wait," Dante said, passing the invitation to her. Chiara read the message and, instead of fear, felt a spark of challenge. She looked at Dante, the man who taught her to fight, and smiled. "Good," she said, straightening the cuff of her silk shirt. "I've always been good at handling emergencies." The war in Milan had ended, but the legend of the Guardian and his queen was just beginning to cross Italy's borders. The Valenti invitation was not just a formality, it was a challenge thrown over the murky waters of the Venetian canals. The Valentis were an ancient dynasty, guardians of banking secrets and trade routes that made the Marchetti Empire seem young. If they were asking for a nurse, it meant something within that family was rotting, and Dante knew that ignoring Venice was as dangerous as walking on thin ice. Venice is different from Milan, Chiara, Dante explained as the private jet flew over the Italian plains. He held her hand, but his eyes were fixed on a dossier about the Valentis. There, betrayal is an art form. They don't use hammers or photos, they use poison, smiles, and masks. Chiara, wearing a gray tailored suit and pearls that Dante had insisted she wear, felt the change in his energy. He was entering war mode again, but this time, he brought her not as a secret, but as his equal strength. If they called me as a nurse, Chiara reflected, crossing her legs, it means there's a physical or moral wound they can't heal alone. They don't want an elite doctor, they want someone who knows how to keep silent under pressure. As they landed and were driven by a luxury speedboat through the Grand Canal, the decadent beauty of Venice enveloped them. The destination was Palazzo Valenti, a Gothic building that seemed to emerge directly from the dark waters. At the entrance, they were met by Lorenzo Valenti, the family heir. He was young, pale, and had eyes that seemed to have seen centuries of sadness. He kissed Chiara's hand with a bow that seemed too long for Dante, whose green eyes darkened instantly. "Welcome to our Museum of Regrets," Lorenzo said, his voice soft as old silk. "Mr. Marchetti, your reputation precedes you. And your queen is even more fascinating than the gossip suggested." Dante kept his arm firmly around Chiara's waist. "Let's skip the formalities, Lorenzo. Why did you call us here?" Lorenzo looked around, making sure the servants were out of reach. "My sister, Bianca. She's been hit. Not by a bullet, but by something that is consuming her mind and body. She holds the key to the vault containing the evidence against the Russian alliance that is trying to buy Venice piece by piece. If she dies, or if she loses her lucidity, the Valentis fall. And if we fall, Dante's trade routes in Milan will be next." Chiara felt the call of duty. "Where is she?" Lorenzo led them to a hidden wing, protected by iron doors and heavy tapestries. The room smelled of bitter herbs and antiseptics. On the bed, a young woman of ethereal beauty trembled, raving in a fever that seemed to have no end. Dante took a step back, letting Chiara take charge. He watched with a mixture of pride and concern as Chiara approached the bed, removing the pearls and rolling up her sleeves, instantly returning to her essence as a caregiver and elite nurse. Chiara examined Bianca's pupils and checked the young woman's neck. She found a small, almost imperceptible mark at the base of the neck. It wasn't a disease. "Dante," Chiara called, her voice cold and professional. "This isn't an infection. It's a neurotoxin administered in small doses. Someone is slowly poisoning her from inside this palace." Dante approached, his presence filling the room like an impending storm. He looked at Lorenzo, who recoiled before the fury in Marchetti's eyes. "Did you bring us here to save her," Dante growled, "or to use us as scapegoats when she finally gives in?" Lorenzo fell into a chair, covering his face. "I don't know who to trust. Everyone here is a Valenti, and everyone wants the vault key." Chiara looked at Dante. She saw the danger, saw the spiderweb Venice had woven around them. But she also saw Bianca, a woman being destroyed by her own family. "Dante," Chiara said, taking his hand. "We are going to heal her. But for that, you are going to have to be the guardian of Venice tonight. No one enters or leaves this palace until I find out whose hand is holding the poison." Dante smiled, a dark, predatory smile that lit up the dark room. "Ethan is already blocking the water exits. No one escapes a Marchetti. Venice might be sinking, but the guardian and the nurse had just found their next battlefield. And this time, the enemy was hidden behind carnival masks." Palazzo Valenti turned into a labyrinth of suspicion. for Chiara to work without being interrupted by the killer, Dante accepted Lorenzo's proposal. A masked ball would be held that night to celebrate Bianca's supposed recovery, serving as cover so Chiara could observe the family members and servants without raising suspicion. "You have 4 hours, Angelo," Dante murmured as he helped her fasten a black filigree mask over her eyes. He wore Venetian gala attire with a dark cape hiding his weapon's holster. "I'll be in the main hall, keeping Lorenzo and the advisors under surveillance. If Bianca worsens, or if you feel watched, break the signaling vial." Chiara, wearing a black silk dress that camouflaged her in the palace shadows, nodded. She had set up a small makeshift lab in Bianca's room. Using her technical knowledge, she analyzed the composition of the toxin found in one of the young woman's teacups. "It's atropine," Chiara whispered to herself, watching the chemical reaction in the test kit. Administered constantly to cause delirium and eventually cardiac arrest. As the sound of Vivaldi's music rose from the main hall, Chiara began her silent rounds. She wasn't looking for weapons, but for chemical traces. She entered the kitchen pantry and, using a UV flashlight Dante had provided, examined the shelves. There, hidden behind bottles of old wine, she found a manipulated eye drop bottle. The residue glowed under the ultraviolet light. But it wasn't just poison, there was a discreet monogram on the bottle, the letter G. Chiara felt a shiver. It wasn't Lorenzo. It was Giulia, the faithful housekeeper who had served the family for 30 years. She ran back to Bianca's room, but upon entering, found the door open. Giulia was there, holding a syringe, about to administer the final dose to the defenseless young woman. "She can't wake up, Miss Rossi," Giulia said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "If she wakes up and hands the key to Dante Marchetti, Venice will no longer belong to Venetians. Fairy promised me my family would be protected if I ended this." "The falcon is dead, Giulia," Chiara said, approaching slowly, keeping the calm voice she used with patience in shock. "And Dante Marchetti didn't come to steal Venice. He came to protect it." Giulia hesitated for a second, and it was enough. Chiara lunged, using a self-defense maneuver Ethan had taught her at the mansion, disarming the older woman and knocking the syringe to the floor. At that moment, Dante burst into the room, followed by Lorenzo. He saw the scene and, in a swift movement, pinned Giulia against the wall. "It's over," Dante growled. "Ethan has already intercepted her communications with the remnants of Fairy's faction." Lorenzo looked at the housekeeper with disbelief. "Giulia, why?" "For the same reason everyone lies in the city," she spat. "Survival." Dante ignored the woman and walked to Chiara. He took her by the shoulders, checking if she was hurt. "Are you okay?" "I am," she took a deep breath, looking at Bianca, who was beginning to breathe more regularly after the antidote Chiara had administered earlier. "She's going to survive, Dante. And she has the key." Dante pulled her into a quick, intense hug, the scent of gunpowder and gala perfume mixing. "You saved a dynasty today, Chiara. The guardian and the nurse have just conquered Venice." Bianca slowly opened her eyes, focusing on Chiara. With a trembling hand, she pointed to the back of a Tintoretto painting on the wall. "The key is there. Take it. Save what's left of us." Dante took the hidden bronze key and looked at Chiara. The game in Venice was won, but the weight of what that key represented was immense. The morning in Venice was born under a golden mist that seemed to clean the stains of the previous night. With Bianca's key and the recovered documents, Dante not only ensured the survival of the Valentes but consolidated an alliance that made the Marchetti group unshakable throughout Europe. Carlo Ferri's network was finally dismantled, route by route. On the deck of the luxury speedboat taking them back to the airport, the fresh lagoon wind ruffled Chiara's hair. She no longer wore pearls or black silk, she was dressed in a soft cashmere sweater and jeans, feeling truly light for the first time in years. Dante was beside her, watching the silhouette of Venice disappear on the horizon. He took a small black velvet box from his pocket. It wasn't the commitment ring she already wore, but something different. Inside was a gold brooch in the shape of a small lantern with an emerald in the center. "In New York, you used a lantern to light dark alleys," Dante said, his voice losing the harshness of command and becoming deep and intimate. "In Milan, you became the light of my mansion. And in Venice, you illuminated the truth through the masks." He pinned the brooch to her coat. "You aren't just my queen or my nurse, Chiara. You are my compass. I built an empire of iron, but it was you who gave it a heart." Chiara looked at the brooch and then at Dante's green eyes, where the storm of war had been replaced by an eternal promise. "We changed each other, Dante. You taught me that I don't need to hide to be safe. And I taught you that you don't need to be alone to be strong." Arriving in Milan, the reception was different from anything they had experienced. There wasn't just security and silence. Nonna Sofia was at the mansion entrance, standing without her cane, smiling as if she had rejuvenated decades. Soph and Ethan were beside her, not as subordinates, but as family. Dante stopped before the staircase and, before the entire mansion staff and his advisors, he took Chiara's hand and raised it. "Listen well," his voice echoed with absolute authority. "The war is over. From today, the Marchetti mansion is no longer a fortress against the world. It is the home of Chiara Vance Marchetti. Whatever she decides is my will. What she protects, I will defend with my life." Chiara felt the weight and glory of that declaration. She was no longer the runaway caregiver. She was the architect of a new era. That night, they went up to the West Wing. The door locked automatically, but the isolation was now a choice, not a necessity. They stood on the balcony, watching the lights of Milan. "What happens now, Dante?" she asked, leaning against his chest. Dante hugged her from behind, hiding his face in her neck, breathing in the scent of lavender and security she emanated. "Now," he whispered, "we live. No secrets, no shadows. Just you and me." Nonna Sofia's caregiver had come to Milan to disappear but ended up finding the only man who would make her seen by the whole world. And the guardian of Milan, who had sworn never to love so as not to be weak, discovered that the love of a nurse was the only armor he truly needed. The legend of Dante and Chiara was just beginning with the indelible ink of loyalty and forever.